Welcome back, AFA, to the Big Read 2025 and the big catch-up for today. We were hoping to catch up the last time and we had some things come up and I had to get busy on those. So today, for sure, we're going to get caught up today. So we're going to start by reading Thursday, May 22nd, and there are two readings attached to this one. So in your Bible, I want you to mark 1 Kings chapter 7, and then I also want you to mark 2 Chronicles chapter 3 as we look at the next story of King Solomon. So we'll start in 1 Kings chapter 7. I don't know why I went second. 1 Kings chapter 7, and we're going to read the whole chapter. It's 51 verses, and we're looking at the building of Solomon's palace. And then we'll move to 2 Chronicles chapter 3. So, do you have your Bible ready? Let's jump right into the story. Now, Solomon was building his own house 13 years, and he finished all his house. He built the house of the forest of Lebanon. Its length was 100 cubits, and its width 50 cubits, and its height 30 cubits, on 4 rows of cedar pillars with cedar beams on the pillars. It was paneled with cedar above the side chambers, which were on the 45 pillars, 15 in each row. There were artistic window frames in 3 rows, and window was opposite window in 3 ranks. All the doorways and doorposts had squared artistic frames, and window was opposite window in 3 ranks. Then he made the hall of pillars. Its length was 50 cubits and its width 30 cubits, and a porch was in front of them, and pillars and a threshold in front of them. He made the hall of the throne where he was to judge, the hall of judgment, and it was paneled with cedar from floor to floor. His house where he was to live, the other court inward from the hall, was of the same workmanship. He also made a house like this hall for Pharaoh's daughter, whom Solomon had married. All these were of costly stones, of stone cut according to measure, sawed with saws inside and out, even from the foundation to the coping, and so on the outside to the great court. The foundation was of costly stones, even large stones, stones of 10 cubits and stones of 8 cubits. And above were costly stones, stones cut according to measure and cedar. So the great court all around had 3 rows of cut stones and a row of cedar beams, even as the inner court of the house of the Lord and the porch of the house. Now, if you sat down and tried to draw out what was just said, you probably could, and you would see how splendid this palace must have been. Verse 13. Now, King Solomon sent and brought Hiram from Tyre. He was a widow's son from the tribe of Naphtali, and his father was a man of Tyre, a worker in bronze, and he was filled with wisdom and understanding and skill for doing any work in bronze. So he came to King Solomon and performed all his work. He fashioned the 2 pillars of bronze. 18 cubits was the height of one pillar, and a line of 12 cubits measured the circumference of both. He also made 2 capitals of molten bronze to set on the tops of the pillars. The height of the one capital was 5 cubits, and the height of the other capital was 5 cubits. There were nets of network and twisted threads of chainwork for the capitals, which were on the top of the pillars, 7 for the one capital and 7 for the other capital. So he made the pillars and 2 rows around on the one stone network to cover the capitals, which were on the top of the pomegranates. And so he did for the other capital. The capitals, which were at the top of the pillars in the porch, were of lily design, 4 cubits. There were capitals on the 2 pillars, even above and close to the rounded projection, which was beside the network. And the pomegranates numbered 200 in rows around both capitals. Thus he set up the pillars at the porch of the nave, and he set up the right pillar and named it Jachin, and he set up the left pillar and named it Boaz. On the top of the pillars was lily design. So the work of the pillars was finished. Wouldn't you love to see those pillars? They had to be exquisite. Let's go on. Verse 23. Now he made the sea of cast metal 10 cubits from brim to brim, circular in form, and its height was 5 cubits and 30 cubits in circumference. Under its brim, gourds went around, encircling it 10 to a cubit, completely surrounding the sea. The gourds were in 2 rows, cast with the rest. It stood on 12 oxen, 3 facing north, 3 facing west, 3 facing south, and 3 facing east. And the sea was set on top of them, and all their rear parts turned inward. It was a handbreadth thick, and its brim was made like the brim of a cup, as a lily blossom. It could hold 2,000 baths. Then he made the 10 stands of bronze. The length of each stand was 4 cubits, and its width 4 cubits, and its height 3 cubits. This was the design of the stands. They had borders, even borders between the frames, and on the borders which were between the frames were lions, oxen, and cherubim. And on the frames there was a pedestal above and beneath the lions and oxen. There was a pedestal above, and beneath the lions and oxen were wreaths of hanging work. Now each stand had 4 bronze wheels with bronze axles, and its 4 feet had supports. Beneath the basin were cast supports with wreaths at each side. Its opening inside the crown at the top was a cubit, and its opening was round like the design of a pedestal, a cubit and a half. And also in its opening there were engravings, and their borders were square, not round. The 4 wheels were underneath the borders, and the axles of the wheels were on the stand, and the height of a wheel was a cubit and a half. The workmanship of the wheels was like the workmanship of a chariot wheel. Their axles, their rims, their spokes, and their hubs were all cast. Now there were 4 supports at the 4 corners of each stand. Its supports were part of the stand itself. On the top of the stand there was a circular form half a cubit high, and on the top of the stand its stays and its borders were part of it. He engraved on the plates of its stays and on its borders cherubim, lions, and palm trees, according to the clear space on each, with wreaths all around. He made the 10 stands like this. All of them had 1 casting, 1 measure, and 1 form. He made 10 basins of bronze. 1 basin held 40 baths. Each basin was 4 cubits, and on each of the 10 stands was 1 basin. Then he set the stands, 5 on the right side of the house and 5 on the left side of the house. And he set the sea of cast metal on the right side of the house eastward toward the south. Verse 40. Now Hiram made the basins and the shovels and the bowls. So Hiram finished doing all the work which he performed for King Solomon in the house of the Lord. The 2 pillars and the 2 bowls of the capitals, which were on the top of the 2 pillars, and the 2 networks to cover the 2 bowls of the capitals, which were on top of the pillars, and the 400 pomegranates for the 2 networks, 2 rows of pomegranates for each network, to cover the 2 bowls of the capitals which were on the tops of the pillars, and the 10 stands with the 10 basins on the stands, and the 1 sea and the 12 oxen under the sea, and the pails and the shovels and the bowls, even all these utensils with which Hiram made for King Solomon in the house of the Lord, were of polished bronze. In the plain of the Jordan the king cast them, in the clay ground beneath Succoth and Zarethan. Solomon left all the utensils unweighted because they were too many. The weight of the bronze could not be ascertained. That is a lot of bronze. Verse 48. Solomon made all the furniture which was in the house of the Lord, the golden altar and the golden table on which was the bread of the presence, and the lampstands, 5 on the right side and 5 on the left, in front of the inner sanctuary of pure gold, and the flowers and the lamps and the tongs of gold, and the cups and the snuffers and the bowls and the spoons and the fire pans of pure gold, and the hinges both for the doors of the inner house, the most holy place, and for the doors of the house, that is, of the nave, of gold. Thus all the work that King Solomon performed in the house of the Lord was finished. And Solomon brought in the things dedicated by his father David, the silver and the gold and the utensils, and he put them in the treasuries of the house of the Lord. And that is finishing up not only King Solomon's palace, but all of the items that had to be remade for the temple of the Lord. And wow, what it must have looked like when it was finished. I can only imagine. Now let's turn to 2 Chronicles chapter 3. 2 Chronicles chapter 3, and we have already read verses 1 through 14. So we're going to start on verse 15, and we're going to read through chapter 4, verse 22. So that is all of chapter 4. So here we go. 2 Chronicles chapter 3, starting in verse 15. He also made 2 pillars for the front of the house, 35 cubits high, and the capital on the top of each was 5 cubits. He made chains in the inner sanctuary and placed them on the tops of the pillars. And he made 100 pomegranates and placed them on the chains. He erected the pillars in front of the temple, one on the right and the other on the left, and named the one on the right Jachin and the one on the left Boaz. Chapter 4. Then he made a bronze altar, 20 cubits in length and 20 cubits in width and 10 cubits in height. Also he made the cast metal sea, 10 cubits from brim to brim, circular in form, and its height was 5 cubits and its circumference 30 cubits. Now figures like oxen were under it and all around it, 10 cubits, entirely circling the sea. The oxen were in 2 rows cast in one piece. It stood on 12 oxen, 3 facing north, 3 facing west, 3 facing south, and 3 facing east. And the sea was set on top of them, and all their hindquarters turned inwards. It was a handbreadth thick, and its brim was made like the brim of a cup, like a lily blossom. It could hold 3,000 baths. He also made 10 basins in which to wash, and he set 5 on the right side and 5 on the left to rinse things for the burnt offering. But the sea was for the priests to wash in. Then he made the 10 golden lampstands in the way prescribed for them, and he set them in the temple, 5 on the right side and 5 on the left. He also made 10 tablets and placed them in the temple, 5 on the right side and 5 on the left. And he made 100 golden bowls. Then he made the court of the priests and the great court and the doors for the court, and overlaid their doors with bronze. He set the sea on the right side of the house toward the southeast. Hiram also made the pails, the shovels, and the bowls. So Hiram finished doing the work which he performed for King Solomon in the house of God. The 2 pillars, the bowls, and the 2 captains on top of the pillars, and the 2 networks to cover up the 2 bowls of the capitals which were on top of the pillars, and the 400 pomegranates for the 2 networks, 2 rows of pomegranates for each network to cover the 2 bowls of the capitals which were on the pillars. He also made the stands, and he made the basins on the stands, and the one sea with the 12 oxen under it. The pails, the shovels, the forks, and all its utensils, Hiram Abi made of polished bronze for King Solomon for the house of the Lord. On the plain of the Jordan the king cast them in the clay ground between Succoth and Zereda. Thus Solomon made all the utensils in great quantities, for the weight of the bronze could not be found out. Solomon also made all the things that were in the house of God, even the golden altar, the tables with the bread of the presence on them, the lampstands with their lamps of pure gold to burn in front of the inner sanctuary in the way prescribed, the flowers, the lamps, and the tongs of gold, of purest gold, and the snuffers, the bowls, the spoons, and the fire pans of pure gold, and the entrance of the house, its inner doors, for the Holy of Holies, and the doors of the house, that is, of the nave, of gold. And that is our reading for today. At first glance, you may say this is way too ornate, it's way too overdone. But if you think about it, if you've been into any older churches, especially some of the beautiful Catholic churches in Europe, it might help you understand why they were built the way that they were, because ultimately they mimic in some ways Solomon's temple from the Old Testament. Either way, it would have been very, very costly, beautiful, and maybe even a little intimidating. But it was all done for the glory of God. Meet me back here tomorrow, and let's continue the story of King Solomon. I'll see you then.